Hey everybody, welcome back to Conscientious Omnivore. My name is Pal. Today I'm going to be giving you guys a breakdown of some logical fallacies, and I'm going to relate them back to specific debates or comments in videos that I've come across in the past few days. I just want to kind of collect my thoughts on them and share them with you, because there's quite a few of them that came in recently, and I think there was already one that I did pretty recently addressing what I think is sort of like a appeal to futility fallacy, the one that I explained about the vegans killing insects and small animals, like in the production of grains and other plant foods, and how that could be basically used to justify the willful, intentionally killing of larger animals like cows and pigs and stuff like that. So if you haven't seen that video, maybe go check that out. But that's really, I didn't name it, I don't think I did anyway, but that's really kind of like a variation of the appeal to futility fallacy. But the ones I'm going to cover today are a little bit different, so let's get into it. So the first one up is, recently I had the debate with Boris on veganism and ethics. And it was quite a long debate, and I know a lot of people probably don't have 4 hours to go and sit through and listen to the whole thing. So I'm just going to talk about some specific things that were kind of covered here. And if you missed it and you want to see it, you can go check it out. But Boris had replied back with a million timestamps of various things that he thought I was contradicting myself, or I wasn't listening to him, or I misunderstood him, or what have you. But I want to focus on specifically something that he accused me of. He said that I was shifting the burden of proof. So this is it here. He gives a timestamp and he says, "This shows that you don't understand what burden of proof means, and because of that you shift the burden of proof." And he sent me a link. I'm going to address that in a second. But anyway, if anybody's interested, I did put a very thorough reply back to Boris if anybody wants to read that. I will jump back to this in a second, but if anybody wants to read through the whole thing, it's very long. And then he replied back. I did tell him that if he wants to talk about it more, we should do it on the live stream, because it's very time consuming to go back and forth like this with the comments and timestamps and everything. There's a lot to address, and I don't think it's as productive. And many people probably won't read through the comments, but they probably would watch another stream. So I have to look at kind of what's best for my audience and for myself as well. What's the best use of my time? Boris, if you're watching this, it's not meant as an offense, but really let's talk on another live stream, because this isn't really productive. It might be productive for you, but like from my perspective, it's not as good as another stream. So what is the shifting the burden of proof? So actually, you know what, sorry, before I jump in there, sorry, I wanted to show you guys another thing, because I honestly think, Boris, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I read your arguments, it reminded me of somebody else that I have talked with, and who frequently kind of says that vegans shift the burden of proof. It made me think of that person's arguments, and then I went back and I watched this video by Carneval. So if anybody hasn't seen it, I've debated Carneval twice now, and he actually really kind of thinks that he's sort of figured out name the trait and how he can get around it. And he had a kind of weird, awkward debate with Ask Yourself recently. I did watch that. It was kind of weird, honestly, but that's neither here nor there. In this video, where he did a 3-part video where he was debunking Name the Trait, Carneval basically says that one of the main problems with Name the Trait and veganism in general is that it's shifting the burden of proof. He's basically making the statement that it should be on vegans to convince the non-vegans of the world to go vegan, and that the burden of proof is on us. So this is both from a health standpoint, like we have to prove that it's healthy or as healthy, or certainly that it's at least no worse than an omnivorous diet or a carnivore diet or what have you, and also from an ethical standpoint, that like because the status quo, the mainstream, most people in society do eat animal products and do use animals, that it's actually, even from an ethical standpoint, incumbent upon the vegans to convince them otherwise. And that is basically exactly what Boris was saying, both in the debate and in the comments. So now I'm going to get into what the actual shifting the burden of proof logical fallacy is. So what it is in the logical form. Here it is. Person 1 makes a claim which requires justification. Person 1 demands that person 2 justify the opposite of Y. If person 2 refuses or is unable to justify the opposite of Y, then person 1 claims that Y is true. So, that's it in a nutshell. And, as an example here, they basically, give a couple of different kinds of things. It can be either for proving something that is, just kind of like really far out there, like people don't even, maybe there isn't even an example of it that they can like point to in reality. It could be something really, fanciful, or it could be something that goes against the grain of what's commonly accepted and commonly, thought of as being the truth. So in this case, like veganism. And what I replied to Boris was the following. This is what I wrote to him. I said, "You say that I'm shifting the burden of proof and need to convince you that veganism is a more ethical way to live, but you do not have a correct understanding of this concept. Shifting the burden of proof would work like this. I claim something that is ridiculous in your view. Veganism is more ethical. You say the opposite of what I claim. Veganism is less ethical, or simply know that it's not more ethical. Then I say that if you can't prove what you say is true, what I said must be true. Then you could claim that I'm shifting the burden of proof." And but then I go on, but that is not what actually happened in the debate. I wanted you to explore your own morals and ethics to see if your own views would prove that veganism is more ethical. I believe I showed quite well that they do, and that is why you had to say, or say now, that your views are illogical. I did not rely on having to show the opposite of what I claimed to be true. I did not rely on you having to show the opposite, sorry. So, basically, I think this is the problem with Carneval and also with Boris, is that they are trying to basically say that the burden of proof is on the vegans. And in some ways, that is absolutely true. Society is doing something, going along steadily, doing the same thing for, centuries, and then somebody comes along and tells them that it's wrong. And it's something that everyone accepts as morally acceptable and morally fine. And we're the ones telling them that it's wrong. But the case is here, we're not simply saying justify it, and if you can't, then you're wrong. That's not the argument. The argument is that what are your own actions? What are your own, morals? And then if you can show that there is what's the word? There's a discrepancy between what you yourself personally believe is morally right and the way you're actually behaving, then it's like, okay, so what do you want to do with that dissonance? What do you want to do? And, do you want to keep saying that you love animals, but then keep killing them? Or do you want to, change that and actually stop killing animals? That's the vegan argument. It's not resting on the laurels of like, you justify to me why it's okay for you to do it. And then, if you don't want to or you can't, then I say, haha, I'm right. That's not what anybody is doing. That's not what I'm doing, and that's not what other vegan activists that I see are doing. People like Earthling Ed and Joy Carpstrong and other people like that. They are always trying to work with the person and get them to see things from their own moral compass and their own convictions, and then basically align their actions with their own moral convictions and their own moral compass. So I tried to help Boris out here and gave another example. I said another way to think about it is like this. Let's say you were raised in a society where it was considered fine and good to keep human slaves. I then came along and told you, hey, I don't think it's moral to keep slaves. To you, this idea would sound ridiculous because all your life you've been taught to think it's okay. You tell me, of course it's moral to keep slaves. I tell you to prove it to me, and then you accuse me of shifting the burden of proof. If my only argument is that you are either not able or not willing to prove your viewpoint, that mine must be right, then you would be correct in saying that I'm shifting the burden of proof. That is the logical fallacy. If my only justification, my only explanation is that you can't prove the opposite, therefore I must be right, then that's an invalid argument. That's a logically incorrect argument. And that's why it's called the shifting the burden of proof fallacy. But if, on the other hand, I ask you about your own morals, and you tell me, yeah, I respect other people, I want to be respected by them, etc., this is pretty much words that Boris used in the debate, then I would say to you, okay, what about the slaves? Don't you think you would want to be treated as equals if you were in their position? And in order for you to be morally consistent with your own ethics, you would have to agree with me that you should not keep slaves and then become an abolitionist. This is not shifting the burden of proof, simply asking you to change your behavior to align with your own morals. And that's pretty much the equivalent of what I was trying to do with the vegan topic with him. Is I tried to say, look, you care about animals, you care about a dog. You don't think it's right to unnecessarily harm the dog. You also agree that it's unnecessary to eat animal products because you can be healthy without them. So it's like your own things should lead you to that conclusion. And that's what I was trying to do. Now, he didn't really agree with me. He thinks that I didn't explain the burden of proof right. The point of this video is not to really go back and forth with Boris on this topic. I mean, I'm fairly certain I understand the logical fallacy correctly here, and I've explained it correctly. But I did want to just mention this and then also move on to another logical fallacy that often gets used against vegans. And this was also a little bit of what was in the previous video that I did addressing the chat from this debate when the claim was made that vegans are killing insects and smaller animals, and that it's willful and that it's happening. So other people make this kind of claim against vegans as well, when we are told that you drive a car, you use a computer, I'm using my phone here, and there's animal products in the plastic, and all this kind of stuff like this. So the video I did recently about Pope Francis not going vegan for Lent, there was a huge string of comments going back and forth between Perpetually Annoyed and this person called Underal, or I don't know how to pronounce that, but Undar Al or whatever. And this person was basically trying to explain about how the Bible justifies killing and using animals for food. And Perpetually Annoyed correctly pointed out that, hey, there's also a bunch of stuff in there that would indicate that it's not okay, because it says thou shalt not kill. It doesn't just say thou shalt not kill people. And there's other kinds of things in there as well. And also pointed out correctly that there are many points in the Bible that aren't deemed as morally relevant and or accepted in today's day and age. Things about stoning people, selling people into slavery, all sorts of kinds of things like this. So this person then goes and turns and basically commits what is called the Quoque fallacy. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. My Latin is pretty much non-existent. And I want to just show it to you first as what the logical fallacy is, and then I'll point it out here in the actual comments. So, tu quoque is Latin for you also, or an appeal to hypocrisy. It is a fallacy that intends to discredit the opponent's argument by asserting the opponent's failure to act consistently in accordance with its conclusions. To some extent, Boris also tried to use this as well, because he tried to do kind of the same thing, and then he kind of tried to bring it to the antinatalist discussion, as in, like, you're causing harm, why don't you kill yourself, kind of thing, because otherwise you're being a hypocrite. And how can you tell me to not, consume animal products when you also cause the suffering and death and harm to animals? So this fallacy is basically present here. Person A makes a claim X. Person B asserts that A's actions or past claims are inconsistent with the truth of claim X, and therefore X is false. So it's basically, here's the example. Peter says Bill is guilty of defrauding the government out of tax dollars. And then Bill responds by saying, how can you say that when you yourself have 20 outstanding parking tickets? So it's like, it doesn't change the truth of, whether or not Bill is guilty of defrauding the government out of tax dollars. It's just simply pointing out that, oh yeah, Peter's not perfect either. And it somehow is trying to, shield, Bill is trying to shield himself using this claim. So let's go back to the comments here. Where was it? Here it is. So Underall says, or whatever, Undarall says, you're just as guilty as the average omnivore of animal slaughter. How do you get to say we can't have meat when it is okay for you to use their products? So then later on he qualifies this of what he means by using their products. He says that the definition of veganism, of vegan, this is another point of contention in the debate, in the comments here. He says the actual definition of vegan is a person who does not eat or use animal products. And yet here you are doing the very thing you say is bad, because he goes on to say that, we are using the phones and the plastic and the internet, and he also calls me retarded, and also perpetually annoyed is my retarded buddy. Let's see, where was it? Yeah, so here it is. So for all you have done is lied and used animal products that have given nothing but facts. You need to try harder. Your pursuit of me joining you on a live stream is proof that you're not vegan. Do you realize how many animal products are used to make the electronic devices, servers, and internet you use to live stream? But you don't care because you're not vegan and you don't adhere to veganism. You just like to claim you're something you're factually not for virtue points on the internet. So I'm a hypocrite. He literally says you're the hypocrite no one wants to be like. This was actually addressed to Perpetually Annoyed, but in so much as we were kind of making the argument together, I would say it's addressed to me as well, because I did offer to do a live stream together. And if you're watching this, I'm still happy to do it. So, the reason why I wanted to point this out is because it's sort of a combination of the two Quoque as well as the appeal to futility. So, one thing is basically just saying, like, killing even more animals, because we know that directly eating animals kills more animals than just directly eating plants. Even if you are killing some animals to produce the plants, you still have to produce, anywhere between 5 to 10 times as many plants to feed the same amount of animals that you then can consume. So, even if we just take it at face value, we should still all be eating plants, even if you care about, all the bugs and insects and everything, because you're still killing far less of them by eating the plants directly. Now, that's part of it. That's the appeal to futility. And then he's literally just saying, like, we're basically hypocrites. We're not even vegan. And the only person who could be vegan is somebody who literally just, what was the quote that he used from the dictionary? A person who does not eat or use animal products. And to him, this has to be an all or nothing, absolute, you can't be on the internet. You can't have a phone. You can't use a laptop. You can't probably even walk on the road, because heaven knows we have animal products in the in the tar and in the concrete and whatever else that gets used for paving the road or painting the lines on it, or who knows. So you'd pretty much have to be living in the woods, like I don't know if you'd even be really allowed to be able to move, because you might step on a bug, and that would definitely mean you're not vegan, because I don't know, you're using animal products in the sense of, like, for walking, you've just crushed some. So I don't know, but my point in talking about this specifically is that it is literally the to Quoque. He's basically saying that we're hypocrites, and therefore don't tell me that I can't eat meat. Okay, so just to wrap up, I just wanted to share these really quick, because these are actually very common kind of responses from people against kind of the arguments for veganism. I really think that a lot of these are coming from, kind of defense mechanisms. People are really trying to protect in any way, shape, or form that they can their own kind of fragile egos of, like, nobody wants to actually admit to themselves or to anybody else that they're not living aligned with their morals, that they're doing something that is, kind of going against what they themselves hold to be, true and good. And, a lot of this is nobody wants to be a hypocrite. I don't want to be a hypocrite either. And it feels kind of funny to be called out as being a hypocrite because I'm using, a phone and the internet and what have you. And I would just go back to what I said to Boris in the debate. If you're telling me that I'm a hypocrite because I'm not willing to kill myself, if that's the ultimate, thing of the ultimate way to reduce, animal suffering and other people's suffering is to, like, get rid of myself, that is actually kind of denying my own right to existence. And obviously, every living, being has a right to an existence. And that is exactly what veganism is trying to do. It's trying to minimize the harm that we do to others. I know as a vegan, that it's not possible to totally avoid all suffering and death that I directly cause. I know that, but I am going to try to do the best I can to reduce it as much as I can. I've said this before, the things about like, animal byproducts used in things that aren't kind of like, really easily viewable, things in like electronics and cars and stuff like that. Those are things that will go away. As the world does become more and more vegan, those animal byproducts will be going away. They're byproducts for a reason. They're byproducts of a system that is made to eat them for the most part. And those animals are bred to be killed, to be eaten. And their byproducts, like their bones and their skin and feathers and blood and all these other things that people don't tend to eat, or in most societies don't, those are things that then get sold or just given away for free because they're a byproduct that nobody wants to pay for, and the companies themselves that are slaughtering and profiting from the bodies of these animals don't want to have to deal with disposing them, so they're often able to get rid of them for free and or maybe even some profit, and then other industries are able to use those to make something else. So the classic example I've talked about before is bone char is used to process and bleach sugar to make it like white sugar. And this is the classic example that I've said before. If you have a industry that basically can give you as much bone char as you want for almost free, because it's just like it is a byproduct of this industry, maybe it's worthwhile economically to make a sugar processing process sorry, a system that uses that product, because you can get it for so cheap. If people altogether stopped eating animals, you wouldn't have the bones available. It would certainly not be economical to produce and kill those animals just so you could get their bones, and then you could process the sugar and bleach it white. So you would obviously figure out some other way to do it, or people would simply just be like, well, it's just not economically viable to process it white, and then everybody would just eat like the brown sugar. That's pretty much how this would work with the phones and the electronics and all these other kinds of things too. We are not putting animal products into these things because there is no other way to do it. They're doing it because it's the cheapest way to do it, and that's what companies do. They'll always go for the cheapest solution. That's how they maximize their profits. So I don't think these are, in any way, shape, or form good arguments against veganism. I think, these are very clearly logical fallacies that, people are exhibiting, and also they're accusing the vegans of exhibiting, but I don't think they're doing that. So, if anybody wants to give your opinion on it, I'd love to see if you think that I shifted the burden of proof in the debate with Boris. I honestly don't think so. I didn't make any kind of claim that I said resides on him to prove the opposite, and if he can't, then it must be true. I did no such thing whatsoever. And yeah, so anyway, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys liked it. I don't think I had to cover anything else. This is the main stuff that I wanted to talk about. But yeah, I think there's lots of people who are using these kind of logically incorrect or like fallacious arguments against veganism. And yeah, I think the more that people see this and kind of recognize the pattern, the easier it is for you to basically respond to them, and then hopefully get them kind of asking questions of themselves again. And yeah, having the analogies sometimes is helpful as well. So you can take it out of the veganism debate and just move it back to the day-to-day kind of mundane explanation of the fallacy, and then it's easier for people hopefully to see that that's what they're doing. So yeah, that's it. If you guys liked it, give it a big thumbs up. Thanks, and see you in the next one.